Welcome to the Playing Hooky podcast with your hosts Rachel and Nathan, brought to you by UtilityMuffinLabs.com. Consistently rated adequate.
Welcome everybody to the Playing Hooky podcast. I am Rachel.
And I'm Nathan.
How's it going, everyone? So, this is a very special Christmas edition of the Playing Hooky podcast. Nathan, tell the folks at home what movies we watch.
Well, first of all,
okay,
I'm going to explain something for
Sure.
everyone listening.
Sure, do it.
This is kind of like our experimental episode.
Okay.
Because we're recording a podcast and we have a video camera.
It's
so
true.
we're trying to record it as well.
Yep.
So, we've had to get through all the weird technical things. We're confined for space. We're confined for lighting. So, hey, who knows? It might be a real great episode.
Yeah.
Or it might be a real funky one. You had a hair on your face.
That's what I appreciate you grooming me. That's how
looking out for you.
That's what primates do when they love each other.
So thank you guys for listening, for watching, whatever it is that you're doing, that you're consuming this with.
Yeah.
But we decided to watch some Christmas movies.
Absolutely.
I don't know. We didn't talk too much about the movie that you chose, which was Love Actually.
And just to be fair, for those of you who listened to the last podcast, I did give him a choice. And I gave him a choice of two movies. Now, I will say neither of these are my favorite Christmas movie, but I was relatively certain that you hadn't seen them. There's A Nightmare Before Christmas and Love Actually.
Right. And the reason why I chose Love Actually is because I have seen Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And I've seen it more than once.
Right. So have I.
Right. So I'm pretty familiar with it. So there's not going to be any great revelation there.
Right. And the whole spirit of the podcast is to expose each other to things that we'd never seen before, right? Which we kind of...
Or like, we've never seen or never experienced or have like a very poor understanding of, we sort of don't really,
Right.
we never watched the whole thing or we just never watched it with open eyes.
Right. And so the reason I chose those two movies, even though they're not my favorite Christmas movies, which my favorite Christmas movies are the Muppet Christmas Carol, and then the very old black and white Christmas Carol, which I can't remember what year that came out, but it's like the version that came out in the 1950s and it's in black and white. Those are my favorite two Christmas movies. I really like the Christmas Carol, as it turns out, but I also really, really like The Nightmare Before Christmas because Halloween is my favorite holiday. And as a kid who was a little bit rebellious and like trying to be spooky, that was like such a fun movie.
It's a culturally relevant piece of film. I won't say like I like it or dislike it.
It is a musical.
Right. That's the problem. Like I've watched it, I've seen it, but like it's very hard for me to get into it because of the musical aspect. If it was just the movie, maybe I'd enjoy it, but it wouldn't be the same thing then.
Right.
But anyways, I've already concluded my feelings about it. Tim Burton style.
Right.
I'm very familiar with it.
Right.
Love Actually, though, I never even heard of. I didn't know it was a Christmas movie. I never had no understanding of it.
So I'll get into this more if you want to talk about it. But the reason why Love Actually was one of the movies I chose is because it is a Christmas movie. I knew you probably had never seen it.
No.
And the first time I saw it, I actually really, really liked it. And it was kind of emotional for me. And I'll tell you that story in just a minute. But before we get there, the other movie we watched, the one that you picked out, which this was a no-brainer, was Die Hard.
Right.
And I had only seen Die Hard one time before, and it was when we very first started dating.
That's all that needs to be said about
and
that.
I've never seen it before, and it was one of those instances where, like, let's just say we very first started dating, and we've liked each other a lot, and there may have been a movie on that we didn't really pay much attention to because of reasons.
Yeah.
It was The Wrath of Khan. I've seen it hundreds of times and you had seen it before. And then like when we were more able to focus our attention on a movie, you were like, you've never seen Die Hard? And I'm like, I've never seen Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, first time I watched it was in July. So not a Christmassy time of year.
Right.
But I really liked it. And it's the only time I've seen it. So we needed to revisit it because you've seen it hundreds of times. And there was a bunch I didn't appreciate in the first time I saw it because it was the first viewing. And I was also distracted because I was sitting next to a really cute boy.
So Die Hard is one of those things that it's a movie that the Christmas film aspect of it is kind of up for debate.
I don't think so. I think the internet's decided it is a Christmas movie.
I think that there's other people that go, no, it's not. But anyways, it's one of those things. It's hotly contested, right? It's an internet thing to go, oh, it's a Christmas movie. Oh, it's not. And I don't know if I came by the idea of it being a Christmas movie independently, or if I read something somewhere. But anyways, Die Hard has been one of my favorite movies since I was a kid. I think it's one of the best action movies ever made.
Yeah.
And
it's just a good movie.
I mean,
it totally holds up. It came out in 88, so it's 2018, so it's 30 years old? Yeah, that movie's 30 years old, and it holds up really well.
30 years old.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Like it's a great action movie. Bruce Willis is hilarious, but also like it's a good movie overall. I'd say a great movie, like head to toe. And what is it, an action movie that happens to take place during Christmas, or is it a Christmas movie that happens to be an action movie? I think it's an action movie that happens to take place during Christmas. Yeah. But I would argue that movie and that story wouldn't be the same if it took place on another holiday,
right? Like
New Year's Eve. If it were taking place on New Year's Eve, different feel for the movie, right?
Yeah.
There's like a theme throughout it's important that it's Christmas time. Right?
Yeah, it is a focus on it. Now, to be fair, you probably could replace party with anything else, but there's like visual elements, and there's like certain things happening in the theme of the film that like the Christmas spirit and things of that nature. So there are elements to Die Hard that cling to the concept of it being a Christmas movie, but I feel like you could really replace it. However,
how would you propose to do that? So, as someone who could write a thesis on Die Hard, you've seen it so many times. What would you replace Christmas with then?
I would probably just make Die Hard 3.
Okay, which I've not seen.
Because Die Hard 3, so yeah, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Die Hard 2 is kind of like, it's Die Hard in an airport on Christmas the year after. And it's not.
I'm just trying to get you to lean forward so you stay in frame.
It's not my favorite movie.
Okay.
It's not really, I mean, it's not terrible, but really, like, of the first 3 Die Hard movies, it's the weakest.
Okay.
The third one is good, and I feel like it's as good as the first one.
Okay.
But it's, it takes place during the summer, all through New York City. It's after the third one, I could pretty much live without any other Die Hard movies. I think they're all progressively shittier.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. I have 2 questions. First question. Are there any consistent characters besides John McClane in these movies?
Yeah, the Sergeant Al Powell is in the second one.
So Carl Winslow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carl Winslow.
How I grew up knowing him.
It's not his actor's actual
name. What was it,
name.
Bill Johnson?
Yeah.
Bill Johnson? Mr. Bill Johnson, we'll call him.
Yeah.
Also Carl Winslow. Steve Urkel was his foil.
Yeah, it's weird that he's played like very specific, like, jovial, heavy set cop roles. And I don't know this for sure because I didn't do any research before we did this podcast, but I don't even think those are the only 2 times he's played.
I think you're right.
That role, like that type of role. I think he's kind of known for that. It's a really odd niche.
Okay.
But Reginald Val Johnson.
Yeah.
God
bless you, sir.
He is in the second one. And then I believe those are the only 2 remaining characters. His wife and the reporter are in the second one.
The douchey reporter.
Yeah. They're in the second one. So there's some people that remain, and it's weird. His wife and the reporter are kind of like shoehorned into like roles in the film. They're not really important. They don't seem to naturally occur like they did in the first one. And then in the third movie. I'm pretty sure John McClane is the only remaining character.
Okay.
They reference his wife, but she's never shown in the movie at all. But the remaining cast in the third one, Jeremy Irons plays Hans Gruber's brother, his older brother.
Ooh, nice.
And
another British actor with a fantastic voice.
I feel like it was an appropriate replacement. I don't think anybody can really truly replace what Alan Rickman did in Die Hard, and I think had he been asked, he probably would have said like that's one of the roles he's going to be known for his entire life, because it's just so he plays that character so coolly, so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Bruce Willis is the only character that remains into the third movie.
Okay. Thank you. Informative. Second question. So let me set this up. You know how like sometimes you're driving down the street and there will be like a gas station on one corner and then like a gas station on the exact opposite corner, and they're kind of competing with each other?
Yeah.
Are Die Hard and Lethal Weapon like competing gas stations of the late 80s and early 90s? Because until I saw Die Hard, I kind of just like interchanged them in my mind. Like I knew one was Mel Gibson and one was Bruce Willis, but I never really cared. Are they kind of similar?
So,
because they're kind of cop stories, right?
Kind of. I don't really think that I don't think that they're competing. I think that they sort of satisfy similar concepts, but I think that they sort of stand on their own.
Okay.
I think that Die Hard was less buddy cop movie,
right?
And Lethal Weapon and like Beverly Hills Cop, I think that those are probably a little bit closer in competition.
Okay.
But I don't think they were like really competing per se.
Okay.
But the Lethal Weapon films were very much like buddy cop. Like and that was like a big thing in the 80s.
Right, yeah.
And Die Hard...
Cops were a big thing in the 80s.
Yeah, which is weird.
Like Beverly Hills Cop, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, RoboCop. I'm sure there are others I'm forgetting.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. I think it probably has something to do with Ronald Reagan's presidency.
Yeah, there must be like there's like someone out there that's written their like sociology PhD dissertation on this, I'm sure. Yeah, because it's very much a sign of the times where cops were sort of being celebrated in a way that they haven't really been since. So like getting into the movie a little bit more, there was one thing that I picked up this time that I didn't last time. So back to Sergeant Powell, who's Reginald Vell Johnson's character, and John McClane, at the point where John McClane is sort of like tied up, not literally, but he's kind of held up in this in like the roof of the building. And he's talking on the walkie-talkie, and they're kind of trying to raise his spirits. And so Sergeant Powell's chatting with him, and he's like, hey, man, why did you become a desk cop? Because it's revealed earlier in the movie by, Reginald Vell Johnson's character.
You got flat feet?
Yeah, he got flat feet. Like, why are you riding a desk, Because, they're getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And he asks him, like, oh, why are you doing that? And he does a great job acting, being really upset and very like, it's kind of a touching scene for an action movie, but Sergeant Powell kind of says like, I shot a kid accidentally, it was a 13-year-old kid. He was running down an alleyway. It was dark. The gun looked real, and I shot him and he killed him, and I could never draw my weapon on someone ever again. And then there's kind of like, like the sad violin music, and John McClane's like, oh man, I'm sorry. And he's like, oh, you couldn't have known, like when you asked. And then that comes back at the end of the movie where Sergeant Powell actually saves John McClane and his wife from like the hand coming out of the grave terrorist who's going to shoot him with a machine gun. And Sergeant Powell's there, like draws his weapon and shoots the guy and like saves the day. And it's kind of like, I like that because the movie could have just been all about John McClane, but I feel like whoever wrote the movie did a really good job developing other characters. Like probably like Hans Gruber, Sergeant Powell, and John McClane are like the biggest characters that I think were really well done. Everybody else is kind of just, on the periphery. They're like, the side dishes, right? But those three really are the meat of the story. Yeah. But anyway, kind of back to my original point, I think it's really interesting that Sergeant Powell tells that story because, like, as we know in the media today, that's something that police are plagued with over and over again is, police brutality and, African-American men being shot and at a higher rate, than anyone else. And I think that the only way you could still have a character like that and have that line and have that story be part of the movie is if the cop in question was African American, I thought that was really interesting because if you were to like remake that movie today and Sergeant Powell was played by a white cop, it would change the whole tone of the movie just because of Black Lives Matter. And I'm not saying that any of those things are bad. These are very good movements. But I think it's really interesting that even 30 years ago, we were still trying to address those things in popular culture.
I think it was pretty, I think that there was some observation going on at the time when that movie was made. Because the white cops in the movie, and we'll get to I think that there's a thematic change in like police movies, but the white cops in that movie are fucking morons.
Oh yeah, like they're all fucking morons. Yeah. They made Sergeant Powell, who's African American, the only smart cop in the movie.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah, he's the smartest cop, and he's like the least cop of them all. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, they kind of show him at the beginning, and he's like kind of not respected by the guy behind the counter with the little donut crack, and
the security guard, the fake security guard at the towers, like, yeah, whatever, I'm not paying attention to, I'm not taking you seriously.
All the bad guys, for lack of a better term, they kind of don't give him a lot of respect. But he ends up being like the one advocate for, like, every time we, the audience, go, oh, this is a bad idea, he's verbalizing it throughout the film.
He really is the voice of the audience.
Right. And so I think that's interesting. And I think that one thing that I noticed too, this movie came out in 88, and like, this is before the whole Rodney King thing. And I think like this is kind of like the last era of like cops kind of being heroes in the same sense that they were beforehand.
Right.
Like after this you have like Bad Boys, and you have like a whole different, like, there's a shift. And I think even like the Lethal Weapon films, like, they start to change. But I think these movies, like, for maybe I'm just buying into it or reading into it too much, but like movies like this, your Lethal Weapons, your Die Hards, and even Die Hard 3, like, and go, like, they seem to be much more multicultural than like what our actual world is. It was like they were trying to portray like a greater sense of equality than what actually existed.
Yeah, I think that's true. And did they do it perfectly? Absolutely not. It was the 80s. They're still not going to do it perfectly. I mean, look at like all the past couple of years, the Oscars and the big movement and all that. But I think there seemed to be an effort, and I think, I'm guessing, because I was all of 4 years old at the time, and I'm not I'm not going to profess to be the most woke person in the world. But what I will say is that I think, probably Hollywood was trying to start, whoever wrote this movie was trying to start addressing like the whole, like, hey, there's not enough diversity on the police force probably, and hey, like, kids are getting shot, and that's something that white people living in the suburbs or in the cities just didn't know was going on because they didn't experience it. But I'm sure every African American could probably tell you that they've seen police brutality, or they know someone who's been affected by it. And so I think like this movie, it was like, I was kind of like a breath of fresh air, right? Like. I think that's one of the reasons why it still holds up today, is because it's still kind of relevant. Like, and it's nice to see, even though it is just like a silly action movie that takes place during Christmas. It is kind of nice to see these real life things be addressed, because that's what makes it so engaging still. Right.
So here's an interesting bit of trivia. Did you know that originally the role of John McClane was intended for Frank Sinatra?
Wow, what a terrible idea that would have been.
Yeah, so you guys can feel free to look this up. I'm not going to go into it overly long because it's just like an interesting little piece of trivia. But Die Hard was adapted from a story previously that had was a series of books about a police detective. Not quite the same, but anyways, Frank Sinatra had starred in a movie about this character many years before, and part of his contract was he got first offering if they ever made another movie about it. And by the time that they made this, I think he was like in his 60s.
Yeah, he didn't look like a young man.
Yeah, so Frank Sinatra passed.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, but
it's good. He passed.
Yeah, look into it because there's more information about it. Like I said, I don't know all the details. I'm not going to go really long. It's not really part of like our podcast. But the other thing that you said too about like the diversity of this film, you had like made a comment about like the character Theo. Who was like the computer hacker guy.
Yeah, like the black nerd. Yeah.
Right. Like it was very interesting. It was like and if you look at this movie and you just kind of like see the elements that are in this movie, you can follow those strains into films for like years and years to come.
Yeah.
There's so many elements that are reused in other movies all the way down the road. The one big thing, and this isn't like a great revelation about this movie, but the thing that I've always loved about Die Hard is that it's paced really well.
Yeah, it is.
And that's, like I said, that's something that's not like it's a daring, like, oh, hey, I've got a revelation. Like, people know, like, it's paced really well. And I think that the other movie that John McTiernan did, Predator, I think is paced really well also. So I think that, like, the directors...
Like the original Predator? Like, get to the chopper!
Yeah, they're made by the same director.
Okay,
so,
all right.
The level of violence in those movies, like the overt, like, sight of violence and blood, I think is consistent.
Yeah.
So, but I think that there aren't any spots in Die Hard where I get bored.
No, and that's really saying something. How many, if you had to guess, how many times do you think you've seen Die Hard?
Well... I'm not really sure. I would say probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I started to make it a yearly thing where I would watch it. No matter what, I would watch it every Christmas.
Okay.
It's like my Christmas movie. Like some people watch A Christmas Story or Miracle on
34th Street,
whatever. I'm not into those movies. I'm not really into Christmas, but I'm into Die Hard. So I probably would watch it every couple of months before then. I would say I've probably seen it 20 or 30 times.
Okay, so not like hundreds of times. Nothing crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you could really watch a movie that many times. Like I know there are people that like have watched movies that many times.
Right, yeah.
But I think a lot of times they just put a movie on.
Right.
And then
I did that today with The Princess Diaries while I cleaned the living room.
Yeah, but I've seen it enough times where there's certain parts of the movie where I can just recite verbatim. I know every like beat of that movie.
That's how I am with Jurassic Park. Yeah. There's some lines, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's some phrases that if people start them, like my brain will autocomplete them with like a line from Jurassic Park. Like if someone goes life and there's a brief pause, I just go finds a way. Like in my brain, just like if someone says the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, like that, my brain auto completes it. So I totally get that. Well, so John McClane, Bruce Willis, amazing character, amazing actor. Sergeant Powell, Reginald VelJohnson, fantastic character, really great, fun character actor. Let's talk about really what I think is the center of this wonderful jelly-filled donut that is Die Hard, which is
Deputy Director Dwayne T. Robinson.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember his name. No, Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber. Gruber. So let me just tell you a little bit about my relationship with Alan Rickman. Yeah. Now, when I say my relationship with Alan Rickman, this is all a made-up relationship in my head. But he and I, throughout my life and his life, and even after his passing, we've in my imagination, we've been pals.
Right.
I find his voice to be the most sultry and sexy tone that has ever existed in the universe. Yeah. Maybe a close second to your own. I
got shit on Alan Rickman.
It's true. It's true.
Let's not. Don't spare my feelings. I don't have shit.
One time,
on Alan Rickman.
A friend of mine put me on speakerphone. I called, and she had a bunch of people over, and she put me on speakerphone. I didn't know it, and she goes. Rachel, why don't you repeat that thing you told me about Alan Rickman's voice? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you were describing Alan Rickman's voice and how it made you feel. And I was like, oh, his voice is like cocoa butter. And I just want to stay at home and rub it all over my body. Like, I love Alan Rickman's voice. Like, I want to sink up into my neck into a tub of Alan Rickman's voice. Like it just it does something, like it just gets me going. Like it's so sexy. And so like when I was a kid, the first thing I ever saw him in was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. The very, very...
He was the sheriff of Nottingham.
He was the sheriff of Nottingham. And, like, I've always kind of had a thing for the bad guy in movies. But that really solidified it. Yeah. Because even though I was probably 7 or 8 years old, like, despite years of tomboyish behavior and dress... I knew that I was a straight woman since that time because listening to Alan Rickman's voice just really would just like got my engine going. I was like, oh my God, like I'm a voice girl. So anyway, then I saw him actually in Love Actually, which is a good tie-in. He's in Love Actually.
Yeah, that was an interesting little thing that it hadn't occurred to me. And anyways, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
you continue.
But then when he was cast as Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies, like that was the best thing. That was the best gift that could have been given to me as I think the first Harry Potter movie came out when I was a senior in high school. Tells you how old I am.
And for people watching us on video, I'm not ignoring Rachel. I'm simply looking up the name of a movie that he was in that all of you should watch if you get the opportunity to. I cannot remember the name of it.
He's an amazing actor. Like he's been in a lot, I think it was that year that he passed away. I think we lost David Bowie earlier that year, which is also someone who, like a pop culture, as a young kid who saw The Labyrinth and then kind of fell in love with his music, and then as kind of an angry adolescent around the time where he made I'm Afraid of Americans. I've always really loved David Bowie as well, and so we lost David Bowie, we lost Alan Rickman, we lost Prince later that year. It was a rough year. I think it was like 2016. It was a rough year. But I still like whenever I watch a movie that has Alan Rickman in it, I still get like a little like, a little sad, a little whimsical. It's the same thing that happens to me when I see, I forget which one, with the Batman movie that had Heath Ledger in it, and you see his performance as the Joker. The Dark Knight, yeah. And you just can't be like, oh man, that sucks. Yeah. He's he had so many more years of great acting ahead of him. Yeah. And I'm not saying that Alan Rickman had so many years of great acting ahead of him necessarily. He's probably, getting into his 60s and wanting to retire. But like, I just really feel like the world really lost a gem.
The interesting thing about Alan Rickman is that he started acting really like in an older age. I think he was in his 40s when he started acting. And I believe, don't quote me, I'm no expert, but I believe Die Hard was his first film.
Okay. Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, that's a way
that kind of typecast him as like a villain. I know he's in a few like of the very.
I think that was something he struggled with too.
Yeah. I know he was in a couple. I think he was in a couple of like the more like kind of foppish British period movies. He was in the other movie that I really loved him in was Galaxy Quest. Oh my gosh, and he played sort of like the reluctant, like
he's in Dogma.
He was in Dogma, yeah, but in Galaxy Quest, that character's so funny because he's like, that classically trained British actor that finds himself making, a lot of money on a sci-fi TV series and then like resenting it totally.
Yeah. If you guys want to see a good Alan Rickman film that not a lot of people are aware of, and when I say a good Alan Rickman film, I mean a good performance from Alan Rickman, like classic Alan Rickman. There's a movie called Closetland.
Closetland?
Yeah,
never
you
heard
need
of
to
it.
see that. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. You can look it up yourself. But that's a movie from like 91 that is definitely a must-see for anybody that's an Alan Rickman fan.
Okay. So. Great. Well, we probably have I think there's probably a couple generations of Alan Rickman fans, right? There's the people who are older than us that were adults or older teenagers when Die Hard came out, right? And then they probably, if they were Alan Rickman fans, followed his career through Robin Hood and some of the other like less well-known movies. Right. Then there are people our age that maybe like Die Hard, Robin Hood, and then like kind of the Harry Potter Alan Rickman, Dogma Alan Rickman, Galaxy Quest Alan Rickman. And then there's people younger than us. Like I'm like an elderly millennial. So there's like younger millennials and probably the generation behind them that know him only from the Harry Potter movies. So really, you've got decades of great Alan Rickman that we should all be consuming. Yeah. So anyway, Die Hard, I loved it. Again, the second time. There are things that I noticed this time that I didn't notice last time that made me appreciate even more. And like, yeah, it's a cool Christmas movie. But it's a great action movie, and it's just a really, really good movie.
Yeah. And honestly, the only criticism I have for Die Hard, and if anybody else has this experience too, please share it with me. I don't know if this is any different in like Blu-ray editions of the movie or what, but there's a thing that I've started to notice with older movies, like movies from the 80s and before, especially action films. And I don't know if like I just don't have things set up properly, but I don't think that's the case. The sound is just so like wacky.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a lot of these older movies, and like we just got a new TV. I don't have anything hooked up to it. We watched it off of Amazon because I have it on DVD, but we don't have a DVD player currently. So we watched it on Amazon. And
by the way, worth the $4. Like if you have $4 and you have the option of like, I'm going to go to Starbucks and get a coffee that I'm just going to piss out in a couple hours anyway. Or you could rent Die Hard, rent fucking Die Hard.
Right.
Starbucks coffee's not that good. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So the sound is weird. Like dialogue is always really quiet. Mm-hmm. And then explosions, gunshots, loud banging noises are like blow your ears out loud.
Yeah, it must have been something with the version that they have available for rent. Because I feel like when you would watch like Saturday matinees on TV as a kid, or whenever you see like a TV, like a theatrical production that's put on TV, that happens a lot. So I don't know, maybe it is the way they recorded sound.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's a weird thing that I've noticed, and Die Hard isn't the only one that does it. It seems to be a lot of like mostly older action films. So somebody out there that's smarter than me will probably know why that's a thing. Just tell us in the comments.
Not smarter, more informed.
Schmeider. Let's talk more about Alan Rickman films.
Love Actually being another one.
Yeah, can we?
All right.
Yeah,
so,
are we ready for that?
Yeah, before you take a giant steaming shit on this movie, let me just put a little bit, like, let me just defend it just a tiny bit, okay?
Yep.
All right, so the first time I saw this movie, I rented it on DVD, okay? I won't get into the details, but I was at it was Christmas time of year. I was working. I was in university. I was at college, and I was on Christmas break, and I was working part-time at a movie theater. And long story short, my mom worked nights, and I wasn't able to go be around any other family. So my mom was working on Christmas, and I lived in the city that my university was located in. So all of my friends went home for Christmas, and I was like in the city by myself, and I was probably like 19. I was kind of feeling sorry for myself. I was like, oh, it's been Christmas by myself, fucking sucks. So I decided that I was gonna get a bunch of junk food and rent some movies from Blockbuster Video. I'm fucking old. So I got some DVDs. I even just called them videos. When was the last time you watched a video? I can't remember. But I rented Blockbuster and I got 3 DVDs. The Pianist. Okay. I can't remember. Another movie about World War II and the Holocaust. I can't remember what it was. And to balance things out, it wasn't Schindler's List, but it was something else like from a no. You know what it was? It wasn't the Holocaust. I rented The Pianist. Angela's Ashes.
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds terrifying.
It's Angela's Ashes is it's the movie was based off of an autobiography of like a guy, an Irish guy who lived in, I think, Limerick, in the years before, like,
only sad tales
World
come from
War II.
Limerick.
Oh yeah, it was so sad. It's like the saddest movie ever. It's about like the struggle of being like a young Irish person who's like starving and then eventually goes to America. But it's not a happy movie.
No.
Like children die in the movie of like natural causes because poverty is a thing, right?
Ricket.
It's something, right? The flu. So The Pianist, which is like a tragic tale, right? Yeah. And then Angela's fucking Ashes. And then I was like, well, I probably need something happy to watch because I'm sad, right? So I was like, oh, Love Actually. Oh, this has got Alan Rickman in it.
I would have probably chosen a movie that Rachel had never heard of, called The Burbs.
Yeah. Oh, that was another thing. Like, okay, so just a quick aside. There's a character actor who's in Die Hard, and Nate's like, "Oh, do you think he's going to go hang out with Tom Hanks now?" And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
She didn't get the joke, so I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. But real quick, there's a scene where the FBI is having the electric company shut off the grid for Nakatomi Plaza, and the guy that's in the tunnel, who's on the phone with like the power company, he plays a character in The Burbs, and I made like a little off-color like
Yeah.
Burbs joke.
This happens at least twice a week where Nate's like making what he thinks is a clever cultural reference and being like, and I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I've not seen that movie.
Step up your game. So I made a Burbs joke, and
he's like, okay, but then he did this. He's like, you haven't seen the Burbs? You haven't seen the Burbs? I can't believe you haven't seen the Burbs. And I was like, first of all, I was 3 when that movie came out. Second of all, between 1987 or 8 or whenever it came out and now, I've had shit to do. Like, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the Burbs. But anyway,
okay. But now you will. So,
but
anyways,
now I will. Now
I'm just delaying the inevitable here.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
really kind of just. I feel like. There's anticipation.
No, I can tell your butt's puckering, waiting to take a dump on this movie.
Let's talk about a little bit more about your history.
So anyway,
with
I'm
Love
saying, like, I'm a bit of a morose person. I also really am interested in world history and World War II and Holocaust history. So that's why I rented 2 very, very sad movies. And then I was just like, let's balance it out and watch Love Actually. So I watched The Pianist and I cried. And then remember, this was like either Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve. And I was all by myself. I had no family. I'm already very emotional. I'm feeling very sorry for myself. I'm in my own head. I'm like, woe is me. No one to hang out with on Christmas. And then I pop in Love Actually. Okay. 19-year-old girl watching Love Actually by herself a couple days before the holidays when she's already emotional. That movie wrecked me. I cried beginning to end. I was just like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then, like, as I remember it from that experience, I was like, this is the best Christmas movie ever. And I was like, this movie is great. And then I like forced my mom to watch it the next day when she was, or like the next time she was off of work. And she's like, okay, yeah, this is fine. It has like, it has like every British actor. Like, she was not impressed. But then, okay, so I was just like, yeah, Love Actually is great. And then I saw it a couple years later and I'm like, oh, this is not a good movie.
Yeah.
And then that's why the reasons why when you said Love Actually, I guess I was like, you've chosen poorly.
Yeah, I definitely felt like.
So let's set this up. You work nights.
Yeah.
It took us 3 tries. 3 tries for him to stay awake through this movie. Part of it was from exhaustion, but I think part of it was because you're just like, this is so bad. I have no reason to be invested in this.
Yeah.
And I'd rather sleep than watch this terrible movie.
Like, sometimes I'll watch movies I really enjoy and I'll just be tired and, you know, I'll kind of like doze off a little bit. But like this movie on 2 separate occasions, there was like something in the back of my head, like some entity, and his name is Sleep, and he was just like pulling me.
Right.
And I'm just like, I can't do it. So let's get into a little bit about Love Actually. So you said it's got every British actor known to man.
Just about every British actor from the time.
Yeah. Keira Knightley, Hugh Grant, Liam Neeson's, Andrew Lincoln, Emma Thompson, Colin Firth, Bill Nighy.
Nighy, yeah.
I know who he is. I'm just not familiar with how to pronounce his name. The kid that is in Game of Thrones, Thomas Brody something.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, who plays,
who looks, he's creepy. He's like off-putting. Just because he's like, he looks like a very small adult. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. He was like, the character he was playing was very mature.
Yeah.
And it was a little too precocious, and it was a little off-putting, yeah.
Alan Rickman, Rowan Atkinson, Laura Linney.
Not British, but she's in a lot of British stuff.
Yeah. And then just like, Martin Freeman's in it.
Yeah, that was before Martin Freeman was like uber famous, and I think he was just doing The Office at that point, right? Like he was famous in the UK, but maybe not here.
Denise Richards is in it. Who was she in that movie?
Let me see.
Denise Richards.
She's like one of the really sexy girls.
Shannon Elizabeth is in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like so it's one of these movies. It's like they get like every possible big name actor in it, and you go, how did they get so many people? And I don't know that this is the case with this movie, but there's a lot of movies where the like producers or directors or like people that are involved with them are just like they like nonstop harass people, and they like use someone else's name to like get somebody else in it. And I feel like this has to be kind of a similar situation. There's a movie, I think it's called Movie 34.
Yeah, you remember you telling me about it. Yeah, I've not seen it, but I know about it.
Yeah, it's anyways, it's a terrible movie, but it's like to me it kind of like felt like one of those movies where they had different actors who had like super different schedules, and they just kind of like shot a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So
it's like probably if you've never seen Love Actually, it's like 12 different stories happening in one movie, and they're all kind of intertwined because like the character in story A might be the brother of the character in story G, and then like everything's kind of tied up nicely at the end, and how everyone is sort of interrelated, right?
So I don't know how to be articulate about how I feel about this movie because
just go for it, boo. Just do your best.
My feelings are very visceral. I kept thinking to myself, I thought Rachel was into science. I thought she was. And I have to second guess that because there's not a single bit of chemistry in this entire movie.
Are you being clever?
Yeah, I was being clever. Because so this movie is about love.
True.
Actually. And there's not like a single example in this movie that I could find where I felt any of the actors that were working together had any chemistry whatsoever. Like watching these people act together, it was like watching aliens try to act out what they thought love was like. Like the every interaction left me going, do those people, have they met before? Like, these were the best possible actors.
Best actors on the planet.
In their worst roles.
Okay.
Like, they are so poorly acted.
Yeah.
And I can't blame the actors.
No.
I have to blame the directors, and I have to blame the writers. Because, number one, the story is fucking trite.
Yo, for sure. It is. It's very saccharine. Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely not a good story.
And one thing I didn't realize until I saw this, and I don't even know if this is true, but like, it seems like when I think Christmas movie or I think Christmas time in the U.S., I think a lot of commercialism, right? It's a lot about buying presents and giving gifts and like the whole like commercial aspect of it. And maybe this is maybe this is an artifact of being an American, but I think Christmas is still heavily associated with religion here. It's not always, but I think for the most part, when you think Christmas, you think about miracles and the baby Jesus and like things like that, and going to midnight mass, and even though not everybody celebrates it like a religious holiday, and people are very, very secular about it, there's still like I'd say a good chunk of the population that view this really as a religious holiday. And the sense I got from watching this movie, knowing nothing about really the UK or the culture around religion, other than like they have their own church now because Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce, right?
Particularly religious.
No, and because like World War II fucked him over, and like why would you be after that point, right? Like it's hard to believe in God when your country's been destroyed by Nazis. I get it, but I really got the sense after watching this movie that like Christmas is a weird thing. Like it's made Christmas seem like our Valentine's Day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like, oh, it's Christmas, so you always tell the truth and you spend it with the people you love. And I'm like, really? Is that what Christmas is about?
It's like the Japanese. You always eat KFC.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just
so
like
arbitrary.
Yeah, so it's like it is nothing to do with like religion at all.
Right.
Not that Christmas necessarily does here.
Yeah,
but it was like
there's probably not a lot of like keep Christ and Christmas going on.
No, probably
England.
not.
Yeah.
There's a holiday here for that, and it's called Valentine's Day, and it's completely made up, and we all buy into it because bitches love chocolate. So let's be real. I love chocolate. I'm not saying you have to buy me chocolate on February 14th every year, but like if you want to, I'm not gonna be mad at you. So
well, I have to thank you, and I have to thank you because sometimes we get movie fans, cinemaphiles. We get jaded and we think we've seen it all. We've seen every bad movie, but sometimes we lose sight of the fact that sometimes giant movie companies, production companies spend an exorbitant amount of money to make really shitty, terribly made movies, and they launch them to the public.
But let me just challenge this. I don't know the specifics or the history, but I feel like when this movie came out, it was kind of popular and it did really well.
Oh yeah,
and
I'm sure it did.
I think people liked it, but I think the speed with which it didn't hold up
was
very quick.
So Love Actually Here's what's really disheartening to me. Love Actually has a 7.6 on IMDb, 63% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 87% of Google users like this movie.
I mean, I don't hate it. I like it. I'll watch it. It's sweet. It's easy. You don't have to put a lot of thought into it.
I want to go on record here and now as saying, I love you, and I've watched this movie because I love you.
Yeah.
But every single actor I saw in this movie, my respect level for them dropped.
No. Even Alan Rickman?
Especially Alan Rickman. This is the worst effort I've ever seen from Alan Rickman.
He did
Alan Rickman gives the impression that someone was like, I'm going to write you a big check because your name is Alan Rickman. Would you just sort of lazily appear in this film and make no effort to act? And he was like, I'm Alan Rickman, of course. And he just fucking rolled in and like, there's this whole like story about him. Like,
these are strong statements.
Yeah, I'm making them.
Okay,
I make them. I am unapologetic. This is. I'm glad you brought it to the table, and maybe this is the first time in the history of this podcast, in the very short history of this podcast, where I am taking a stand.
Okay.
And I am making a statement.
Okay.
And that statement is, this movie is shit. It is shit on a number of levels. It is fucking abominable.
Yeah.
It is terrible. But anyways, there's this whole like sub story about like Alan Rickman. He's married, and there's like some girl that works at his company.
His secretary.
I think he works in the news.
I think he was like, like some journalist. You don't know. It's a vaguely...
It's an office
it's
where
a media
people work.
Company,
right, right. No more effort than that needs
also,
to be.
let me interrupt you really quickly. I feel like all of the people depicted in this movie are like the richest people who live in London. Because I've been to London one time, but I've consumed some British things, and I'm relatively, it's a fucking expensive place to live, and I'm like, I feel like the characters depicted in this movie were like all of the richest people who could have lived there.
This is like
it's unrealistic.
This is the Caucasian approximation of the fantasy world we all think that white people live in. This is the worst.
Yeah.
This movie is fucking the worst.
Yeah.
Anyways, I want to explain deeper. So there's a young lady that works in the office. I believe it's a secretary of some sort, because she sits behind a desk and doesn't seem to have any like real important task.
We call them administrative assistants now.
Sorry. Like he's talking about like going to go get like Christmas presents for his wife. And she's like, "Are you gonna get me something?" And he's like, "What am I supposed?" Like he does the Alan Rickman thing. He's like, he does what we do, and we're like, "Why would he get you anything?" Well, apparently she has like this crush on him, and so he just apropos of nothing. Like there's no issue in his personal life with his wife.
Right.
He's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna like talk to her on the phone." And then, for whatever reason, get her a gift. And then there's this whole ridiculous...
Like a 400-pound gold necklace.
Yeah, not 400 pounds, but like very expensive. 400 British monies.
Which I'm pretty sure is about $800 US.
Can we just call them British monies?
You did.
I'm kidding. I did.
You did.
No, I know.
I did not call them British monies.
Can we just call them?
We can just call them...
Okay.
I think currency makes
British,
it sound...
British currencies.
British currencies.
Yeah. 400 quid.
Maybe.
Is that the right word?
I don't know.
I've never been there.
I'm not
anyways,
one of them.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
It was an expensive ass necklace, apropos of nothing. And then he's like talking. He goes to the store, and there's this like just ridiculous scene with Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Let me put it in the bag for you,"
and it's very much like British humor.
It's so dumb.
But the thing is like it's not good British humor. But I feel like the character development of Alan Rickman, he's set up to be like sort of this like disdainful, sort of like very sarcastic. But there was just something very like I don't know, kind of just like just like snotty. There's something snotty about the way he was playing this character.
Well, that's because he read the script.
And he was like,
"What the fuck is this movie?"
Yeah.
Anyways, the movie progresses, and apparently he buys this young lady a necklace and leaves it in his coat pocket. And then his wife, for whatever reason, goes through his coat.
She's like snooping because she thinks he probably bought her something.
Right. Finds this necklace and then puts it back in his jacket. And I think he ends up buying his wife like a Joan Baez CD or something.
Joni Mitchell CD.
Joni Mitchell.
Yeah.
Anyway, some kind of like whatever. And so his wife, expecting the necklace, she like ascertains that he must have been cheating on her.
Yeah, and the reason, and you might have been dozing at this point, but they kind of set it up for that earlier, like the holiday Christmas party. She kind of sees that woman flirting with him a little bit.
Oh, I just may not have been able to perceive.
Yeah, so she's
flirting.
Yeah, so she's watching them, and he sees her flirting with him, and she sees her husband being kind of receptive to that flirting, and she's kind of like, okay, I don't like what's happening here. I don't like this. And then when she doesn't get the necklace, she puts two and two together, or she makes I think she makes the appropriate leap of assumption, or, leap in logic, like, and he didn't give me this. Like, we're buying each other one gift for Christmas, and this is not a gold necklace. This is a CD. That gold necklace was not for me. And then she like holds it together and is like mom, like the super mom, and then approaches him about it later.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, you're like we're done or whatever. Like we're gonna get a divorce, and I want to be totally frank.
That's
here.
not what she said.
Like that's basically
no. She was like, so the question is like, do I stay always knowing that things would be a little bit worse, or do I cut and run? That's what her question was. And she ends up staying. Like, you find out later that, they're trying to, you assume they try to work it out. Yeah. But like, I think the most problematic thing about that piece of the story is that, like, Alan Rickman's relationship with his wife up to that point seemed really good.
Right.
And not to say that in real life, there can't be men that are just like, very maybe flattered by the attention of a younger woman, and you could fall into that trap easily. But like, the fact that he like was completely oblivious to this secretary having a crush on him, and then went and spent 400 pounds on a gold necklace to cheat on his wife,
but also didn't seem even remotely enthusiastic about her.
No, yeah, it wasn't like,
he wasn't like lusting after her. There wasn't that, and that's the thing. This continues throughout the entire movie.
Right. It's just there wasn't enough
every story.
Yeah, there wasn't enough setup or explanation.
Every story has these people who are going through the motions of like, I'm in love with you, or like, I have this crush on you, or I have this unrequited desire for you, but they don't, there's no emotional resonance. And there's no, so there's another little side story here, where there are two characters that are either like they're extras in a porn, or I don't know what, but like
I think they're just stand-ins for a movie.
I don't know. They're like actors filming fuck scenes. Okay, just to be totally frank, and they're sort of going through the physical motions and having like a conversation that's not like appropriate for the act that they're doing.
Yeah, they're just like talking about the weather and the traffic.
Oh yeah, it was really hell. I was caught on the 305 or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, are you doing anything on Saturday? Do you want to like maybe get a drink? And meanwhile, they're like pantomiming fuck motions.
Yeah, which I think is supposed to be funny.
Right, but that to me is the entire movie.
Okay.
That is the entire movie. It's people pantomiming fuck scenes and having conversations that don't make any sense within the context. There's no even like Liam Neeson's. Yeah, no, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm doing that on purpose. I know his name is Liam Neeson. But so like even him and the kid that's supposed to be like his child.
Yeah, his stepson.
There is no, they have no chemistry to indicate. It's like two dudes got together to talk about like coffee during break at a job. I get no impression that they loved the same person who died.
Okay.
Like this is not there. I just didn't sense it at all. And I was like, this movie is just so, I don't know if that's a directing thing or if the actors were like, fuck it, it's an easy paycheck, let's get in and get out.
I don't know. I feel like there's something lost in translation over time, right? It's not a recent movie. There's probably like I don't know, like, I mean, it's not that we're not getting it because it's British humor.
No. That was the other thing too. Yeah. It's like listed as a comedy, and I didn't find anything about it even remotely funny.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't have anything to offer you. I still like it. It's I still think
absolutely.
it's like it's like it's like
I make no judgments.
It's sweet.
I make no judgment. No, it's saccharin. It's not sweet. Sweet indicates heart.
Okay.
It's saccharin. It's like sugar added to your coffee simply so your coffee is sweet, not to enhance the flavor. Having said that, that's a shitty thing for me to say. I'm not judging you for liking it.
No. So you're saying like it is the worst movie we've ever watched together.
It is by far the worst. It's the worst movie I've seen in the last year. We'll put it that way.
Okay. I buy it.
It is probably one of the worst movies I've seen, like, with this many mainstream actors in it.
I have to say, it's really hard, too, because Die Hard is so good in so many ways. It's just, overall, you take away the theme, take away the Christmasness, take it away that one's a romantic comedy and one is an action movie. You know, if you control for all of those factors, Die Hard is just a superior movie in every way.
Well, and I think, like I was trying to say earlier, I'm glad that I've seen it. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you showed it to me. Mm-hmm. And maybe the reasons why I'm glad I've seen it are not the best reasons, but every once in a while you sit down and you see a movie that's like so bad, it puts other movies that you've called bad into perspective. And you go, oh, maybe those movies weren't as bad. Like, sometimes you gotta
what's a movie that you think is better than you originally thought because Love Actually was so bad?
That's a slippery slope. I don't know. I'd have to think about that long and hard. But like, for instance, people, you see a movie and it's got some little issues, like, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie. But like, I feel like this movie hits every beat for being a bad movie. Okay. It's got too many actors. It's way too long. Right. Too many stories that are convoluted and don't make sense. It's poorly acted. It has poor direction. The music is bad because it's constantly playing. Like, do you know how, like, when you watch a movie and there's like a montage, and they'll like play music, or they'll play like transition music to like enhance the mood. Like the first like 20 minutes to half an hour of this movie, it's just like different tracks like playing in this sort of disjointed way, and you're like, what is happening? Like, are we transitioning to some scene?
Well, they're doing that a lot because they are transitioning a lot.
There's so many different scenes. If they had cut it down to 3, right? If they had done like 3 stories that sort of interconnected and focused on developing those stories, they could have had something that was coherent.
Okay, question for you, though. Yeah. I think there is one positive point in this movie that we can take out of this. How much did you like Billy Bob Thornton as the U.S. president? First of all, why is the United States president depicted in this movie? Oh, because Hugh Grant plays the prime minister, and they had to have like one scene in there where it was just like, "Fuck you, America." I get it, fuck you, America. But
it's like Bill Clinton and George Bush, like they portray the United States as if it were like some sort of sleazeball harasser.
Yeah, they were really playing up on the stereotype of like American girls all being like really ridiculously hot and horny and very, very loose.
I could go on for days.
And that's like, for those of you who aren't from America, Nate, is it like, can you walk into any bar in America and just like there's 3 girls who want to have sex with you immediately?
Totally.
Okay, well maybe you.
No, maybe absolutely. Yeah. No. There's no bar in Wisconsin where they're like, if you go to a bar in Wisconsin... But it's supposed
to be funny. Like, it's supposed to be ridiculous.
Yeah, it's supposed to be ridiculous. Funny, but you have to know what, like, funny is in order to write funny, and this is not.
I think what would have been funnier is if he showed up at that bar in Wisconsin and it was all women who look like they live
I feel like if he showed up at that bar and it was like the bar from the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia... if you're not familiar with that is. So there's this family called the Whites, and they're from West Virginia, and they're all addicted to hillbilly heroin. Okay. And they're the best. Okay. They're just the best. Okay. Like
it's a lot of
babies
meth
galore.
Mouth. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So go check that out. It's a documentary.
Oh, it's real people.
Yeah, it's real people.
Let's not be disparaging of real people.
No, we're not. That's all. It's in the movie. Like they're a delightful bunch of people.
Okay.
They're the type of people that if you talk shit, they will stab you.
They're real Americans, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were to go to a dive bar in the middle of Wisconsin, which is what he goes to in winter, you're not going to find girls in tube tops and Ugg boots.
Right. What you're gonna find is townies.
Yeah.
That have been going to that bar.
And they want to go in and they want to
punch your stupid British face.
And they want to have like a bottle of beer and they don't want to talk to you.
Right. No, it's
they're probably there with their husband, who's the largest man you've ever seen.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, you could
they're 1 night a week away from the kids.
You could definitely go to a bar in Wisconsin and find someone willing to go home with you. But they are not going to be the women in this video.
No. And also I feel like you remember in Roseanne there was the Lobo Lounge, the bar that they went to. And I feel like, like Jackie and Roseanne and the other women who worked at the plastic factory.
That's a great,
they're going there after work, after, a week to, like blue collar working class women or going whatever. Like that's what that looked like the type of bar he walked into. And then he fucking these horny girls,
That's not a thing. It's that's not even a thing. That's so off tempo of humor. It's not.
But it would have been funnier if he had walked into the Lobo Lounge and
he met Roseanne and Jackie and they wanted to go home with him.
That would have been hilarious.
And he would have been like, oh, this is what America's like.
But he still would have done it because he was so desperate.
Because you flew to America to get laid, you dum-dum.
Yeah.
Just buy a hooker.
Ew.
But you're going to buy a plane ticket to go to Wisconsin?
That's true. You're better off.
That's like Jay and Silent Bob going to Shermer, Illinois. So that they can go to the abortion clinic to pick up women because they know they'll put out.
That bums me out.
Right, that bums you out, but that's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's oh, that's funny. Not I'm British, so I'll just go to Wisconsin to get laid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then actually find the joke of Dogma, which is the movie we were talking about with Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
The joke is there is no Shermer, Illinois.
Right.
And they're so disgusting and desperate, they thought it would be a good idea to hang out in front of an abortion clinic.
Yeah.
That's the humor. Not I went in an airplane and I landed and then sex happened.
Yeah. It's unrealistic to say the least.
It's not even. It's just anyways, it's bad.
Okay. So Love Actually, you wouldn't recommend it?
I would recommend it for anybody who's into putting on really bad movies and enjoying them in an ironic sense.
So Nate does this thing when he's watching movies that he doesn't like or that he's not invested in.
I don't like that I do this.
Or TV shows. And I know where it comes from now.
Yeah, I shouldn't do it. It's terrible.
But he talks to the TV and the characters in the movie and tries to have conversations with them like they're going to talk back. And I'm not talking about no, don't open at that door. Don't open the door, bitch. What are you doing? No. I'm more just it's like he's commenting and you'll do it for maybe 10% of the movie. Mm-hmm. And where you get this from, I found out, is from your family, your mother specifically, who we watched Deadpool 2, and she had a conversation with the characters in the movie throughout the whole 90 minutes of the movie. And I was halfway through, and I'm like, she does know that they can't hear her, right? And I was like, is she expecting us to say something? Is she trying to talk to us?
And she'll do shit. She'll be like, what's on the other side of that door? And I'm I'm watching the same fucking movie you're watching.
But you don't do it that bad. But you did it during Love Actually, where you're talking to the characters, and it's no, you dummy, this. Or oh, what's he thinking there? Oh, blah, blah. Or is this? And I'm I don't know, Nathan. I didn't write the movie. I didn't direct the movie.
I think that
I am not Hugh Grant.
I think that the difference is, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like mine is more directed at the screen and less to you because I'm not holding you responsible.
Right.
Whereas hers is more hey, what were they thinking when they did this? And you're I didn't write the fucking movie.
Right. But no, it's not even that she asks questions she's not asking questions. She's every other line in the movie that someone has, she has a comment to make about it or a question for them. Right. And I'm racking my brain through this is the first time we sat down and watched a movie with your mom, who I love your mom.
Luckily, my mom doesn't know what the internet is.
Yeah,
so.
well, I love your mom. I think she's adorable. But this was such a cute quirk But I feel like if I lived with her, it would drive me crazy.
Oh, yeah, it would. Yeah. It's.
But it was like every line that someone gave in the movie, she had like a comment to make, or like she was like, if they asked a question, she would respond to it. And I'm like, Eileen, this movie, you're not the only person watching this movie.
Right. So that's why I really like to watch Jeopardy with her.
Oh yeah, that's the appropriate time to do that. Yeah.
If your mother or any of your family members like to shout things out at the screen while you watch them, I suggest watching game shows with them. Because then it's appropriate.
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, your mom is adorable. I love her. But that's just like one thing. I never realized that you did that until your mom did it. And then I was like, oh, Nate does that too sometimes.
It's a bad habit.
It's okay. It's all right.
It's not okay.
It's cultural. It's a family thing. You pick it up from your family and then you do it. You know?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? It's like, I don't know, salting your watermelon. Some people do that. Some people don't. Usually it's a learned behavior, which I used to always hate. But now, kind of into salting my watermelon.
I don't know that I've ever had that. I usually use vodka in mine.
Oh, well, that is a completely different experience.
It is.
And less wholesome. Well, so what do we got coming up next?
I don't actually know.
So I think a while back we had discussed some comics. I was going to read Maximum Carnage. Which is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And we've heard lots of great things about the Spider-Verse movie, so we'll probably go see that.
Yeah,
but I don't know if we'll talk about that in the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we might mention it.
But I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard too. We'll probably go see that, Into the Spider-Verse.
That's what it is.
And
then you have to, you were going to read Sandman.
Yeah.
Which I might also reread because it's been a hot minute since I read it.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have you read Maximum Carnage for full effect. And
okay.
I'll read one of the Sandman comics you have in your little box set there.
Okay.
Because I've never read any of them.
Let me just read the first one, collection.
So I've read one issue of Sandman, and I don't know if it has anything to do, because it like basically takes place in like old Arabia. Like I don't even know.
Yeah,
I don't think it has anything to do with the stuff that you have at all.
Okay.
We were planning on going to Midwinter, but it turns out financially it's not a very viable thing. So that's not something that we're going to be doing. So hopefully we'll make up for it in podcast land.
Yeah. We were really looking forward to going, but it's just, happening too close to the holidays, and we kind of blew our budget in Austin doing the night in question, which we had a lot of fun with, but sometimes, you got to be a responsible adult and make those hard choices.
We don't actually work in the industry, so there's not, it's not something.
But Utility Muffin Labs will be there. I believe Bob is going.
I think Bob is still going. I think that whole crew is going. So if you're planning on being at Midwinter in January, check it out. See if you can meet up with them, give them a chat, do some role playing with them.
Yep.
Other than that, hopefully this is a great video and you had a wonderful experience. But bear with us because it's our first. And
if you're listening to this and you want to go watch it on YouTube, go for it.
Yeah.
If you just want to continue listening this way, that's fine too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are considering maybe starting a Patreon. For like UML overall. And there may be some rewards that would be available to that related to this podcast. Nate and I are brainstorming. So get with us on Twitter. And if there are any rewards that you'd like to see or that you think would be good ideas for Patreon, let us know, because we're still brainstorming. But I am really this is the last podcast we'll do this year, right?
Yeah, probably. I'm hoping I get the opportunity to edit the video, upload the video, podcast and everything before the first of the year. So that's tentatively. So I'm not really sure when this is going to come out.
Right. The audio might come out before the video.
The audio will probably be out right away. That's pretty low effort, low impact stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, the video, that takes a little bit longer. For anybody that's edited video, you'll know that. Also, like I said, it's our first video, so we're gonna experiment with lighting, framing, how we're gonna record them. But we just wanted to try it out, see how it works, and hopefully get a little bit better as we go.
Absolutely. Oh, in the meantime, I did do a podcast with comedian Jackie Cation on her podcast, The Dork Forest. That'll be coming out sometime in early January. I'll be sure to retweet the links to that on our Twitter at Hooky Podcast. So be watching for that. Jackie is amazing. She's a really lovely person, and she's a very funny comic. So if you're a comedy nerd, you probably already know about her, but if you don't, go check her out at JackieCation.com or like search for her stuff on YouTube. She's a very funny woman. One of my favorite comedians, right up there with, I think, like Maria Bamford and other female comedians that I really, really enjoy. And just in general. Yeah. The fact that she's a woman, I don't care. Comedy's comedy, and she's great at it. So yeah.
I've never been on like a real podcast, so...
You have 3 podcasts.
I don't. That's not what I mean.
And you have been on a real podcast.
Have I?
Podcast by Night.
I don't mean any offense to anybody that might have.
You mean by someone who's real famous?
Yeah, like somebody who's established.
Right.
Like I've never been on a non-genre specific.
So I definitely was like, I think I played it pretty cool when I was there doing the podcast with her, because she came to do comedy in Bloomington, Indiana, which Bloomington, Indiana apparently is a good comedy city. There's a really good, I think it's The Attic, is a really good comedy place there. But I was playing it pretty cool. But I was really fucking excited to be on her podcast.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to The Dork Forest for probably about 5 years. So I don't know if it's like the same level, but it was like as if like, it was like if you reached out to Joe Rogan and was like, hey, can I be on your podcast?
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. Yeah. That's kind of like, I had a little bit of a moment where I had a kind of a heart attack and my heart fell out of my butt, and I was very excited. So be listening for that, and check out Jackie's other stuff, because the theme of her podcast kind of inspired me a little bit in wanting to do this podcast, because she sits down every week with a different comedian or actor or friend, and they just kind of talk about whatever their dorkdom is, so whatever thing they're obsessed with. So I talked with her about martial arts, specifically Shotokan karate, and so fun was had by all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening, watching, whatever it is that you're doing, consuming. Don't forget, go to lucateco.com and use our code Hooky Podcast and get 10% off your hot sauce or your swag, your t-shirts.
They just like posted the other day that they've got some pretty cool like men's flannels, actually. Like really nice. And they had like little baby onesies that had El Yucateco on them. I'm like, oh, it's so cute. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's really cute. I don't know. Like I was like, should I buy one for like your brother's kid? And I was like, I'll think about it. Yeah. She's growing pretty quick. We might wait and see how big she gets.
Also, got the opportunity to try some Death Wish coffee for the first time. Very good stuff. Yeah. Delicious. They are not a sponsor, but, you know, they wanted to.
Yeah. I mean,
I like coffee and I like hot sauce.
Another thing that we really like, Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Dunkin', where you at, man?
Yeah, what's up with that? Like, we probably don't have enough listeners to attract the attention of Dunkin' Donuts.
There's like 4 of you. We know that.
But look, Dunkin' Donuts, I'm gonna take this opportunity before I wrap up this podcast to let you know I've spent so much money on Dunkin' Donuts coffee that and I am such an advocate to the point where like I will get into verbal confrontations with people. I'm a jerk off. Like let me rephrase that. I probably shouldn't use that term when being like, hey, sponsor us. But I'm like a jerk. Like I'm pro Dunkin' Donuts in every way. Yeah. Like totally Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah. Up and down. I think it's the best coffee. So
yeah, I agree. I think
so you should sponsor us.
Yeah. I think whether you're getting it real time at a Dunkin' or if you're purchasing it from the store, like I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I've worked at several coffee shops, both ones that you would have heard of and ones that you hadn't. I know a lot about coffee. I know what good coffee tastes like, and I know what bad coffee tastes like. And I prefer, like, you know, best coffee is something you grind yourself, and it's been freshly ground before you brew it. Not always what you can get. And I think even Dunkin' Donuts pre-ground coffee is superior to most coffee.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, Dunkin' Donuts, or whoever's in charge of such things, if you're listening.
And we're sure that you are.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you be? Like, this is clearly the podcast for you. So, like, just give me coffee.
Yeah, we'll
just talk about you.
basically, we like Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
I'm not saying like I'm trying to sell out, but basically I've already spent so much money and I have a podcast. Anyways, thanks guys for listening.
Yeah, thanks
watching.
Everyone.
Thank you to John McClane.
Thanks John McClane for being in the background here, and Reginald Bill Johnson. You're a hero to us all. Oh, also the principal from the Breakfast Club is on the screen right now, and when he came on, I forgot that he was in this movie, and when he came on, I was like, this asshole again, and Nate like lost his shit. So anyway, all right. Well, as always, I'm Rachel.
I'm Nathan.
And we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Right, bye-bye.
Hey folks, this is Rachel from UtilityMuffinLabs.com. If you enjoyed the Playing Hooky podcast, think about supporting us. For more podcasts, art, videos, and gaming, go to UtilityMuffinLabs.com. Follow our podcast on Twitter, @HookyPodcast, on Instagram and Facebook at our Utility Muffin Labs name, and support us on YouTube at Utility Muffin Labs. Check out our other gaming-related podcasts, 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade and the Nerd Words podcast. Thank you all for your support. Utility Muffin Labs, consistently rated adequate.